So today we get to talk about hydraulic fracturing, otherwise known as fracking. And this term and this use, especially in the United States, has raised a lot of questions. There's environmental concerns, there's energy concerns. But what most people don't realize is that it has made a tremendous addition to the amount of natural resources that can be recovered in the United States. In fact, as we'll see, over half of the oil and gas we have today is due to this fracking. So let's explore a few things. First, what are we trying to do? Well, we're trying to get methane, natural gas, out of the ground. And methane, compared to the other fossil fuels, is the most environmentally friendly. And what I mean by that is when you burn it, you get less carbon dioxide out for every unit of energy than if you were burning oil or if you were burning coal. It's not environmentally friendly to just let methane escape into the atmosphere. Methane turns out to be a much more potent gas than CO2 in terms of a greenhouse effect. But the goal here is not to leak it into the atmosphere. The goal is to use it, to capture it, to be able to use it as an energy source. Natural gas is replacing coal as one of our primary fuels. Actually today, after oil, natural gas is the second largest component of our energy mix. This increase in natural gas usage has happened, of course, because the price is cheaper. And the price is cheaper because the supply is larger. Of all of our new electrical generation capacity, almost all of it has been natural gas power plants. So let's examine a little bit closer what is actually going on and what hydraulic fracturing is. So to start this story, I want to tell you about my granddaughter. She was born in 2008 in Hawaii. And my wife and I, this being our first grandchild, were fortunate enough to be able to go to Hawaii several times that year. First to console our pregnant daughter and hold her hand, and basically we just wanted to go to Hawaii. All right, so come out to Hawaii, and Shelby says, oh, I've got an ultrasound appointment. You want to come with? Sure, this sounds great. I remembered when we had ultrasounds of our kids, right? You get some blurry, sketchy figure, and I think it's a human, right? That's about all you could do. Well, not with today's technology. Man, even though little Katie fetus was maybe, this big, they had this beautiful image on this huge, large, crisp, high-def screen, and they're moving around. They say, okay, now let's focus in on the organs. Let's look at the kidneys. Kidneys of a tiny little baby. Yeah, the kidney was 1 millimeter. And then they found the other kidney and said, oh, this one's 1.5 millimeters. We better watch that, make sure everything's okay. I mean, you went through every organ in the body and could see it, this immense ability to have this fine resolution with ultrasound. So you might ask, what in the world does this have to do with hydraulic fracturing? Everything. You see, it's the ability to be able to use high-precision ultrasound, ultrasonic techniques, to be able to position the drill precisely. See, here's the deal. Fossil fuels occur in a wide variety of areas. Many places that we've talked to before, you need geological traps. You need a trap that will trap in the natural gas and the oil that's made in a marine environment. It's done in some sedimentary layer, so it turns into a porous structure, and this gas and oil is trapped there. But only if geological conditions are just right. Otherwise, the oil and gas would have escaped to the surface, maybe even long before it became oil and gas. Well, that's because it's in porous rocks. But those porous rocks are important because if I put a drill into them and I have a hole in them, I can draw oil or gas from a wide range of spots because the rock is porous, because the gas, the fluid, will go through the rocks. What if this oil or gas was formed still in a sedimentary layer, but in ones that was not porous, in a rock formation that was tight, like shale? Well then, if you merely drill into it and put your nice collection hole 2 miles deep into this layer, nothing pours into it. All of that oil and gas is trapped in that tight formation. So somehow you have to break up the formation. Fracking has been going on since the 1940s. You could take a vertical well, and if you happened to find a band of shale that was deep, you could drill into it, and you could use hydraulic fracturing, and now you could fracture the area around where the drill went through and draw in gas and oil from the surrounding areas, maybe a few hundred feet on all sides. Well, if your zone you were getting this from was very, very deep, maybe this was cost effective. But in many cases, there is shale beds containing these fossil fuels throughout the country, actually throughout the world, that are not very deep. They're narrow. They're maybe 100 feet deep, 100 meters at most. If I went straight down through them and managed to hit them just right and fracture that area, I'd get so little gas or oil back it would not be worth the bother. Here's where the ultrasound comes in. What if I could drill horizontally through this layer and always stay in the middle of the zone? Well, first you have to say, what? You can drill horizontally? Well, yes, we've been able to do that a long time. You basically, tug on one side of the drill head and let it turn a little bit. Doesn't turn at a right angle like going around a corner, right? But it gradually turns, and as you're drilling for hundreds of meters, you can eventually turn the drill head so it is going sideways. But how do you know if it's in the middle of this shale layer? This shale layer is 2 miles deep. You only know that if you have very good seismic information. If the vibrations of the drill head can tell you precisely where it is, and if you've precisely made a map before because of the different density of the shale, so you know precisely where it is. And now I can control, or someone can control that drill head so it goes through that formation, and not just for a few hundred feet sideways, but for miles, maybe 5 miles sideways. You can keep this drill head in the middle of the shale rock, even though that layer is going up and down and up and down, because of this wonderful ultrasound technology. Here's a graph of the annual production of natural gas from shale. And it's interesting, on this graph you can see there are 2 types of wells. Vertical wells, sort of the standard, we're going to drill down, we're going to hit a gas well. And horizontal wells, wells that need this precision ability to be able to control where the wellhead goes. Well, right around 2004, you can see that this was possible. And by 2008, totally dominates the ability to drill this type of well. This has gone on past this time, where we have 2013 data available, even though it's 2015 when we're making the films. We can see that we actually have more gas production from fracking, from these horizontal drilled wells with the hydraulic fracturing in them, from any other source of gas. We're making over half of our gas from fracked natural gas horizontal wells. This happens not just for gas, but also for oil. The chart here that you see shows how much gas and oil is coming in the United States from the shale beds, which are tight rock formations that require this fracturing, compared to all the other sources. And you can see that it's fully half of the quantity. There are some other countries on here too. You notice there's a bit of fracking going on in Canada. They have similar beds, similar geography. There's a tiny bit going on in China for natural gas and a little bit in Argentina for crude oil. But this type of formation exists all over the planet. So it is possible to get resources, recoverable resources, oil and natural gas, in many places by using this technique. Let's talk a little more detail with this animation about how fracking is actually done. The first thing is that you drill a well, just like you would drill an oil well or a gas well. You drill it straight down. And you have to do it very carefully, because somewhere around 100 feet, maybe 200 feet deep, is the fresh water supply. This is where the aquifers are. This is where we get our drinking water. And you don't want any of the surface runoff to get into the drinking water. You don't want any of the stuff you're pulling out from down below to get into the drinking water, right? You need to make sure that as you perforate this area, you put in some type of casing and cement, and make sure that anything that's going in and out of your pipe doesn't go into the freshwater area. You might say, oh, it's just fracking wells we have to worry about. No, any time that you penetrate the groundwater area, you need to be careful with it. Every type of oil well or gas well that's made. In fact, my home, I have geothermal loops. I have loops of water that go down and are pumped back up to be able to take the heat that exists 200 feet deep. It goes through my water table. My well is about 125 feet deep. Even though I'm doing a green renewable resource of having a geothermal loop, it still needs a casing and it still needs a protection barrier around it, because once you've drilled down through this water layer, you don't want the stuff from the surface to get down into where you draw your water from. All wells need to protect the sanctity of the groundwater as you go through them. The shale that we're going to hydraulically fracture is very deep, usually about 2 miles deep, 3,000 meters. And you have to get down there, locate the shale, gradually turn your drill bit to going sideways, and then precisely keep it into the shale layer. So you drill this long well, you put a casing along the whole well, and for these 5 miles you're going sideways, you now have a very special kind of liner that you put in there. You have a liner that has explosive charges. A bunch of little pieces of high explosive. And indeed, after you have it all set, you trigger those high explosives. And what do? Well, they perforate the pipe. They make holes in the side of the pipe. And they start making a hole and a fissure, a little crack in the rock, because you've just let off some dynamite, right? That's how you build tunnels. That's how you take down mountains. You put dynamite underground. So we've put lots of these little charges of dynamite along the pipe for miles. You can see it go off in a seismograph, just as if you were building a tunnel through a mountain, you'd see it go off in a seismograph. So we make these holes. Well, we still haven't gotten to the gas, really. Maybe some gas can now flow or some oil, but only the stuff that was very close to the pipe. The next step is where the hydraulic part comes in. We put a fluid, water, with a few things in it, into the pipe. The largest constituent is sand. It's about 90% water, about 10% sand. And you put this water in and you pressurize it. You up the pressure so high that those cracks that you started making with your explosive expand, because that's the only place you're applying the pressure to. And you hydraulically fracture the rock for maybe 100 feet in each direction. If that's all I did, then that rock would not stay open. But here's where the sand comes in. I'm going to pump all that water back out. But that sand is going to be trapped in those tiny fissures and keep them open and prop them open. So the gas or the oil will be able to flow out. Hydraulic fracturing. I then pump out the water, and I now have a gas well or an oil well. I've used hydraulic fracturing to gain access to that tight rock layer that's gone horizontally 2 miles deep in the earth.